The courtroom held its breath as the judge's gavel cracked through the air, sealing a verdict that felt like a knife against truth. The guarded survivor clenched fists, heart sinking as whispers rippled among the crowd. Rachel Harper whispered, "It cannot end like this." Thomas Blake, the steady anchor, kept his expression still, but his eyes betrayed calculation. Ethan Cole, the reluctant firestarter, shifted in the back row, his gaze sharp with secrets untold. Outside, the storm raged, thunder rolling as if the skies rejected the injustice inside. The survivor's breath caught, haunted by the echo of a memory, a lost voice that still lingered. Samuel Graves, the warm comforter, leaned forward, calm tone, masking something else as he said, "It's not over yet, not while I stand here." The velvet blade, Eleanor Price, lifted her chin with cold authority, her smile a shadow that warned of deeper games. In that moment, a single phone vibrated in the survivor's pocket, a call in the dead of night waiting to change everything. Rachel Harper walked alone through the courthouse hall, echoes of verdict still hammering her chest. Her shoes struck the marble floor with hollow rhythm, as though each step carried the weight of failure. She whispered to herself, "How much more must I lose before it ends?" Her reflection in tall windows looked unfamiliar, a stranger haunted by choices she never made. Outside, the storm raged on, lightning flashing across her pale face. Samuel Graves emerged behind her, voice calm like a balm. "Rachel, you must not give up yet." His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steady yet unsettling. Rachel stiffened, torn between comfort and suspicion. She thought of a letter hidden for years, untouched, as if opening it would unleash truths she was not ready to face. The night pressed harder, wind rattling windows, shadows stretching across the hall. Her body trembled, but she did not stop. The fight was not over, though hope was fading fast. Ethan Cole darted out from the shadows near the stairwell, blocking Rachel's path with sharp eyes that gleamed in the half-light. "You don't know the whole truth," he hissed, words trembling with urgency. Rachel froze, startled by his presence, her breath catching. She demanded, "Who are you, and why follow me?" Ethan's hands clenched, sketchbook pressed against his chest, as though it carried secrets too heavy to share. Samuel Graves stepped closer, calm voice warning, "Rachel, don't listen to him." But Rachel saw the fire in Ethan's glare, and it struck her deeper than words. The storm outside cracked with thunder, shaking glass panels around them. She sensed the fragile balance, a thread between collapse and revelation. Ethan whispered again, softer, "They lied to you all along." His words hung in the hallway like smoke, impossible to ignore. Rachel's pulse quickened, fear tangled with curiosity, as the boy's presence unsettled everything she thought she knew. Thomas Blake leaned against the wall near the stairwell exit, his figure steady as stone, observing silently. His voice carried low, "Rachel, trust me, not him." Rachel's mind swirled, torn between the boy's urgency and Thomas's firm calm. She remembered countless times Thomas stood beside her, never faltering, but doubt now crawled into her thoughts. Ethan shouted, "He hides more than you know." Thunder rattled above, breaking the silence with force. Rachel's chest tightened, her trust in Thomas shaken by the raw desperation in Ethan's voice. Thomas's jaw clenched, a flicker of something hidden flashing across his face. He said, "Rachel, we must focus. Don't let him distract you." Rachel stepped back, her heart pounding, sensing cracks forming in the foundations she leaned on for years. The storm outside mirrored her conflict, a clash of loyalty and suspicion. In that charged moment, the hall felt like a battlefield, every breath heavy with consequence. The phone in Rachel's pocket vibrated again, insistent this time, louder than before, as though demanding to be heard. She pulled it out with trembling hands, the glow of the screen cutting through the shadows. Unknown caller. She hesitated, fear mixing with fragile hope. Samuel whispered behind her, "Don't answer that. It may only break you further." Ethan stepped closer, his voice sharp. That call could change everything. Thomas's steady tone countered, "Rachel, wait, nothing good comes from ghosts." Rachel's heart pounded, breath shallow, her eyes darting from one face to another. The storm's roar outside seemed to echo the chaos in her chest. At last, with shaking resolve, she pressed the button to answer. A voice crackled through, faint but urgent. "Rachel, the truth has been hidden. You must see." Her knees weakened, as if the ground beneath her shifted. The hallway held its silence, waiting for what came next. Rachel Harper sat alone in her dim apartment, rain hammering the window as shadows stretched across the room. The verdict's echo still carved into her chest like a wound refusing to close. She whispered, "Why does survival always feel like failure?" Her gaze lingered on the sealed letter lying on the desk, edges frayed from years of untouched silence. She reached for it, fingers trembling, then pulled away, fear heavier than courage. A reflection in the glass showed not just her face, but the hollow eyes of someone carrying ghosts. The storm's howl outside blended with her pulse, a rhythm of despair. Suddenly, the memory of laughter echoed, faint but haunting, as if the lingering memory was alive again. Rachel pressed her hands against her ears, whispering, "Please, no more." The silence that followed felt crueler than sound, trapping her in the cage of her own thoughts. She shut her eyes, waiting for a breath of strength. Samuel Graves knocked gently on the apartment door, his voice calm even through the wood. "Rachel, it's me," he said softly. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the knob, then opened it slowly. His warm smile met her fragile stare, and for a fleeting second, she felt safe. "You're not alone in this," he murmured, stepping inside with quiet certainty. Rachel wanted to believe, but unease stirred beneath her ribs. Samuel's presence radiated comfort, yet his eyes carried something unspoken, a depth she could not read. He placed his coat neatly on the chair, his movements steady, controlled. "We will fight this together," he assured, his tone wrapping around her like a blanket. Rachel lowered her gaze, whispering, "I'm afraid of what's hidden, not just what's lost." The storm outside cracked with thunder, illuminating both faces for a heartbeat. The flash of light revealed a shadow in his smile, gone as quickly as it appeared. Ethan Cole leaned against the stairwell railing of the apartment building, waiting as Rachel and Samuel spoke inside. His sharp eyes narrowed, sketchbook in hand, restless fingers scrawling lines across a page. He muttered, "They'll never tell her the truth," voice cracking with both anger and desperation. The hum of the storm filled the silence around him, blending with the scratch of pencil against paper. He drew Rachel's face, distorted with sorrow, then slashed across it with jagged strokes. "She deserves to know," he hissed, his breath fogging in the cold hallway air. His body twitched with energy, unable to stand still, like a flame fighting its own smoke. Every sound from the apartment tightened his chest, a war between revealing all and staying hidden. The stairwell light flickered, shadows stretching long across the cracked walls. His voice softened to a whisper, "I'll make them see." The sketchbook shook in his trembling hands. Thomas Blake arrived at the building, his steady footsteps echoing in the stairwell as he found Ethan pacing near the door. "You're meddling where you shouldn't," Thomas said firmly, his tone controlled. Ethan glared, snapping, "At least I'm not hiding the truth." Their words clashed like steel, sparking tension in the cold hallway. Thomas's broad shoulders blocked the path, his presence unshakable. He adjusted his tie, eyes sharp but voice calm. "Rachel needs strength, not chaos." Ethan's hands trembled, but his voice didn't falter. "She needs the truth, even if it shatters her." The storm outside roared louder, lightning casting fleeting clarity on both faces. Thomas's jaw tightened, an unspoken admission flashing for a second. Ethan caught it, eyes widening. "So you do know," he whispered, almost triumphant. Thomas's silence weighed more than denial, the quiet acknowledgement that betrayal may already have begun. The stairwell suddenly felt like a chamber of dangerous secrets. Rachel sat on the couch, the unopened letter still on the desk, her hands gripping the phone that had shaken her world hours earlier. The voice from the call echoed in her mind, urging her toward truths she feared. Samuel sat across from her, voice soft, Rachel, some wounds never heal by tearing them open. She looked up, eyes glistening. But what if I've been blind all along? The storm eased outside, rain softening to a whisper, as though listening to their words. Samuel leaned forward, his gaze steady, almost too steady, and said, "Trust me, not every truth will save you." Rachel shivered at the weight in his tone, unsure if it was warning or manipulation. Her chest ached as she glanced at the letter, still sealed, still waiting. In that quiet moment, she realized the battle was no longer just in court, but within every relationship around her. Silence pressed harder than thunder ever could. The evidence room felt colder than the storm, shelves humming with fluorescent silence as Rachel Harper unlocked the cage. Thomas Blake said, "Inventory first, then questions." She nodded, fear prickling her skin. A box was missing where the ledger said it should be, and her breath hitched like a snagged thread. Samuel Graves said, "Clerical error. We will find it," his tone warm enough to melt doubt. Ethan Cole muttered, "It was here yesterday," eyes tracking scuff marks on the floor. Rachel whispered, "Someone moved it with a key." Thomas scanned the logbook, jaw tight as if swallowing truth. Samuel's hand hovered near her shoulder, gentle, persuasive, heavy. Ethan said, "Look at the timestamp mismatch," tapping a smeared signature. Rachel felt the room tilt, as if justice itself had been shifted 1 inch out of reach. Morning brought no relief as the pretrial conference flared like dry tinder. Eleanor Price said, "Your chain of custody collapsed," voice silk over steel. Rachel steadied herself, refusing to blink first. Thomas Blake said, "We request a brief continuance," each word measured to hide a bruise. Samuel Graves added, "Fairness demands time." Ethan Cole whispered, "They want you rattled," eyes locked on the polished table reflecting their faces. Eleanor smiled, "Justice does not wait for the ill-prepared." Rachel said, "Justice waits for the truth, and we will bring it." The judge's clerk coughed, papers slid, and alliances thinned to paper cuts. The room smelled of coffee and power, and every promise felt taxed. In the hallway, Samuel Graves shepherded Rachel toward a quiet alcove, where footsteps died. He said, "Let me carry this weight for you," eyes steady, voice smooth as rain. Rachel's hands shook, but her gaze sharpened. She said, "You keep asking for trust like a signature in blank ink." He smiled softly, "Because you are tired, and I am constant." Ethan Cole lingered at the corner, listening with clenched jaw. Rachel said, "Constancy is not proof." Samuel leaned closer, lowering his tone, "Then let me earn it by deciding what to reveal." Her breath thinned. She said, "Deciding for me is not care." A shadow crossed Samuel's face, gone quickly as a practiced trick. He said, "We cannot win if you fracture." Eleanor Price met Thomas Blake near the elevators, their reflections duplicating secrets in steel doors. Eleanor said, "Delay is a luxury you cannot afford." Thomas kept his face stone still. He said, "We follow procedure, nothing more." She held his stare, a surgeon measuring incision depth. Eleanor said, "Procedure fails when courage fails first." Thomas's fingers tapped his folder, a Morse code of doubt. The elevator chimed like a verdict. He said, "My duty is clear." She countered, "Duty to whom?" Silence pooled between them, polished and sharp. The doors opened, the car empty as if inviting a fall. Thomas did not step in. Ethan Cole holed up in the law library, laptop glow cutting through oak gloom. He muttered, "Paper trails never lie, only people do." Old case files spread like maps of betrayal. He traced edits in scanned documents, metadata humming secrets beneath polite fonts. He said, "There you are," as a hidden revision surfaced with a name. Rachel entered, whispering, "What did you find?" Ethan swallowed, eyes fierce, a switch in exhibits logged under Thomas's credentials at midnight. Her chest tightened. She said, "That cannot be right." He answered, "Either he did it, or someone is wearing his skin." The storm returned, a low growl, as truth sharpened its teeth. Rachel Harper sat at the courthouse archives, dust filling the air like secrets long buried. She opened an old deposition, the ink faded but names still sharp enough to wound. Ethan Cole whispered, "That's her, isn't it?" Rachel's chest tightened as the pages revealed Eleanor Price's signature in connection to her family's tragedy. Thomas Blake froze, his silence louder than denial. Rachel said, "All this time, the threads were tied to her." Samuel Graves shifted uncomfortably, his warm tone barely holding. "This cannot change what we must do." Rachel snapped, "It changes everything." Eleanor's shadow loomed through the glass of the record room door, her calm presence reminding them she had been in control all along. The storm outside howled, rattling the windows like a warning. Rachel gripped the file tighter, realizing the velvet blade had carved into her life long before the trial. The witness box creaked as a man trembled under oath, sweat dripping onto the polished wood. Rachel Harper leaned forward, whispering, "Tell them what you told me." The man's voice cracked. "I worked for Eleanor Price. She paid me to disappear evidence." Gasps filled the court, papers shuffled like startled birds. Eleanor's face stayed composed, her eyes glacial. Samuel Graves muttered, "This is dangerous ground." Thomas Blake scribbled notes, jaw clamped tight. Ethan Cole glared at Eleanor, as if willing her mask to break. Rachel said, "Your Honor, this testimony changes the foundation of the case." The judge's gavel slammed once, echoing like a gunshot. Eleanor finally spoke, voice silk, "Perjury is an ugly weapon, Miss Harper." Rachel's stomach turned, the truth revealed yet still shackled by Eleanor's power. Ethan Cole spread sketches across the table in the library, each drawing of faces connected to Rachel's past. He stabbed a finger at one portrait, saying, "This is the missing link." Rachel's throat tightened as she recognized the image, her lost sibling's friend, long thought irrelevant. Ethan said, "He was there the night everything fell apart." Thomas Blake frowned. "Sketches are not evidence." Ethan snapped, "But memories are maps." Samuel Graves interjected softly, "Some maps lead you into traps." Rachel whispered, "Or they lead you to freedom." Lightning flashed through tall windows, illuminating the drawings like ghosts brought to life. Rachel placed her hand over Ethan's sketch, tears brimming, as the realization reshaped the past. Thomas Blake stood apart in the stairwell, shadows cutting his face into two halves. Rachel confronted him, voice trembling, "You knew she was tied to my family, and you said nothing." Thomas's voice came low. "I thought it would protect you." She shouted, "Protect me, or protect yourself." Ethan Cole hovered nearby, fists clenched. Samuel Graves said, "This is not the time." Rachel's eyes burned as she demanded, "Tell me why her name was hidden." Thomas's silence stretched like a blade across the room. Finally he muttered, "Because I signed it away." The confession dropped like lead. Rachel staggered back, chest heaving as the ground beneath her trust collapsed. Rachel Harper stood alone by the courthouse fountain, under a sky bruised with storm clouds, the air sharp with rain. She held the deposition pages in her hand, words blurred from her tears. The lingering memory's laugh echoed faintly in her head, a ghost whispering. She whispered back, "Why didn't I see?" Ethan Cole appeared, sketchbook hugged to his chest, whispering, "Because they made sure you couldn't." Rachel's knees trembled, and he steadied her with awkward strength. Thomas Blake and Samuel Graves stood at a distance, both silent, both guilty shadows of choices made. Eleanor Price watched from the courthouse steps, her poise unbroken, her presence a silent threat. Rachel said, "This case was never about law alone. It was about control." Lightning split the sky, as though truth itself demanded to be heard. The courtroom brimmed with tension, every seat filled as whispers circled like restless birds. Rachel Harper stood, voice steady though her hands shook. The truth cannot be buried any longer. Eleanor Price smirked, her silence more cutting than words. Thomas Blake said, "Order, focus on admissible evidence," but his jaw betrayed cracks. Samuel Graves leaned closer to Rachel, tone soft yet insistent. Stay calm, let them fall into their own trap. Ethan Cole slammed his sketchbook on the table, startling the gallery. They lie, and now you see the scars. The judge's gavel pounded, thunderous, demanding silence, yet the storm outside echoed in chorus. Rachel's pulse surged, her chest tight as she locked eyes with Eleanor, feeling history and betrayal intertwine. Eleanor said finally, "You think justice is about truth, but it is about power." The words landed like blades, drawing gasps across the room as Rachel braced herself for the breaking point. The sealed letter shook in Rachel's trembling hands, the courtroom silent as she tore it open. The paper inside revealed words written years ago, a testimony her sibling left before disappearing. Her eyes blurred as she read aloud. They knew, they always knew. Eleanor Price held the key. The gallery erupted, shock filling the air like fire spreading across dry grass. Samuel Graves whispered, "Rachel, stop. Not all truths belong here." Ethan Cole shouted, "Read it all. They deserve to know." Eleanor sat motionless, her jaw tightening though her eyes never wavered. Thomas Blake said, "This changes the foundation of the case." Rachel's voice broke, "It changes everything." She dropped the letter to the table, tears streaking her face as the final line echoed, "If you're reading this, I never came back." The silence was crushing, a wound reopened before all. Rachel collapsed into her chair, chest heaving, as the warm comforter's mask cracked. Samuel Graves said, "Rachel, I never wanted you to see this." She looked at him, fury burning. "You kept it from me." His calm tone faltered, "I did it to protect you from breaking." Ethan Cole spat, "You betrayed her." Thomas Blake shifted uncomfortably, caught between silence and duty. Samuel's voice sharpened, his warmth replaced by steel. "Some wounds cannot be weaponized without destroying you." Rachel's hand slammed the table. "You were supposed to help me fight, not bury me in lies." The judge warned, "Control your voices." The air thickened with betrayal. Samuel's steady smile gone, replaced with something darker. Rachel realized the comfort had always been a chain. The weight shifted again as Thomas Blake rose, his voice strained but resolute. "I have a confession." The courtroom hushed instantly. Rachel's heart froze as she whispered, "Thomas, don't." He looked at her, pain etched across his face. "I altered the chain of custody once. I thought it would protect the greater good." Ethan Cole shouted, "You destroyed justice." Samuel Graves muttered under breath, "Sacrifice was necessary." Rachel gasped, "You betrayed the very thing we were fighting for." Thomas clenched his fists, his shoulders rigid. "I believed it was the only way." Eleanor Price smiled faintly, her control solidified by the cracks opening before her. The storm outside rattled glass, as though mirroring Rachel's collapse. Betrayal had bled into every corner, and the foundations of trust shattered beyond repair. Eleanor Price stood at last, calm as the storm outside raged, her voice echoing, "Now you see, justice bends to those who hold it." Rachel Harper rose, trembling but unbroken. "No, it belongs to those who dare fight for it." Samuel Graves said, "Rachel, you are blind to the cost." Thomas Blake said, "You cannot fight what has already been lost." Ethan Cole shouted, "She can, and I'll fight with her." Eleanor's gaze swept across them, a queen surveying pieces already trapped. Rachel felt the letter in her hand like a blade, the last weapon of truth. She raised her voice, "This ends today." The gavel struck, thunder roared, and the climax of every betrayal, secret and wound collided in the storm of justice's fragile scales. The courtroom air thickened as Rachel Harper placed a small sealed envelope on the table, her fingers trembling but firm. She said, "This is the weapon you tried to bury." Eleanor Price arched a brow, her calm cracking as silence spread like wildfire. Ethan Cole whispered, "What is it?" Rachel's breath shook. "It's the affidavit my sibling wrote, notarized and hidden away." The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Proceed." Samuel Graves muttered, "Rachel, this could break you." She shot back, "No, this breaks her." Eleanor's knuckles whitened on the desk, her composure slipping for the first time. Thomas Blake looked down, guilt slicing his face as truth surfaced. Rachel unfolded the document, her voice steady. It names Eleanor Price as orchestrator of the cover-up. Gasps cut through the gallery, the storm outside roaring in chorus. For a moment, Rachel felt the weight shift, the scales of justice trembling in her favor. Rachel's chest heaved as she read the affidavit aloud, the words cutting through the room like lightning through glass. She ordered evidence destroyed, and she silenced witnesses. Eleanor Price remained upright, her eyes unflinching but her jaw tight. The crowd shifted uneasily, whispers buzzing like insects. Ethan Cole clenched his fists, whispering, "They can't ignore this." Thomas Blake said quietly, "This is enough to reopen every door." Samuel Graves exhaled slowly, his voice gentle. "Be careful, Rachel. Truth can wound deeper than lies." Rachel shot him a look, then let it wound her. The judge hammered the gavel once, declaring, "This evidence will be admitted." Rachel felt the ground steady beneath her feet for the first time. Outside, the storm softened to heavy rain, as if the world itself paused to listen. Ethan Cole stepped forward, his voice carrying more weight than his years. "I was there, I saw what they erased." The courtroom froze as his words cut into the silence. Rachel turned toward him, surprise and fear blending. "Ethan, no," but he pressed on. "They tried to silence the past, but I remember every detail," his eyes sharp, his body trembling. Thomas Blake said, "Testimony like this can expose you." Ethan snapped, "I don't care if it burns me." Samuel Graves leaned back, whispering to himself, "Foolish courage." Eleanor Price's lips curved into a faint smile, like a predator amused by prey's defiance. Rachel whispered, "Ethan, your voice matters more than you know." Thunder cracked outside, shaking the walls as if underlining his truth. His hands gripped the table, the fire inside him undeniable. The judge leaned forward, his voice firm. "The court will now hear closing arguments." Rachel Harper rose, her body trembling, but voice steady. "Justice is not a game for the powerful. It is a duty to the truth." She locked eyes with Eleanor Price, fire in her stare. Eleanor rose with poise, her voice velvet. "Justice is not truth. It is survival, and survival has always been mine." The gallery gasped, the raw honesty chilling. Thomas Blake said under his breath, "She's admitting it." Samuel Graves whispered, "No, she's twisting it into strength." Ethan Cole whispered fiercely, "And her lies, Rachel." Rachel raised the affidavit high, saying, "Then let the record show, survival is no longer yours alone." The gavel's crack silenced everything, the verdict moment pressing near. The judge's voice echoed, "The verdict is delivered." The jury foreman rose, paper in hand, silence gripping the chamber. "We find the defendant guilty of obstruction, conspiracy, and perjury." Rachel Harper's knees weakened, her breath catching in her throat. Eleanor Price did not flinch, her face composed, as if prepared for every outcome. Ethan Cole whispered, "We won," though his eyes searched Rachel's face for peace. Thomas Blake closed his eyes, relief and guilt warring inside him. Samuel Graves leaned back, his sigh heavy with shadows. Justice served, but at what cost? Rachel clutched the affidavit, her tears falling freely, not of triumph but of survival. She whispered to herself, "At last, but never whole." The gavel's final strike marked the end, though the scars remained carved deep. Rachel Harper walked out of the courthouse into the damp air. The storm cleared, but the sky still heavy with clouds. Her shoes splashed in shallow puddles as each step echoed the trial's weight. She whispered, "It's over, but it's never done." The courthouse lights glowed behind her like watchful eyes, and she tightened her grip on the affidavit. Ethan Cole followed a few steps behind, silent but present, his loyalty carved in his stance. Rachel glanced up at the bruised sky, her breath a cloud in the cool air, and thought of the sibling who never came back. She whispered, "I carried you here." The silence that followed pressed deeper than any gavel's strike, carrying both relief and haunting. Samuel Graves stood in the shadows near the exit, his calm smile gone, replaced with something unreadable. He murmured, "Justice is never free." Rachel heard his voice and turned, but said nothing, her eyes refusing to yield. His hand rested lightly against the wall, a pose more claim than comfort, and his silence said more than words could. She walked on, the distance between them widening like a wound that would never close. Samuel whispered again, barely audible, "Every bond carries its price." The words lingered in the night, twisting the air with doubt as Rachel refused to look back. Ethan Cole lingered by the courthouse fountain, sketchbook hugged to his chest, eyes restless as if searching the night for unfinished answers. He whispered, "They'll never stop, not really." Rachel joined him, her voice steady but tired, "Neither will we." He nodded, his young face hardened by battles older than his years. "I don't want to disappear like them," he muttered, staring at the rippling water. Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder, saying softly, "You're seen, and you matter." For a brief moment, the storm inside both of them quieted, though the silence carried too many echoes. Eleanor Price stood beneath the colonnade, rain dripping from stone above, her black coat pristine despite the storm. Her face remained poised, her gaze fixed on Rachel in the distance. She whispered to herself, "Truth is fragile. Control is eternal." The words carried no tremor, her conviction still untouched by verdict or shame. She adjusted her collar, the gesture crisp, deliberate, as though preparing for another battle. Lightning flickered far off, illuminating her for a brief second, like a statue carved in arrogance. In that flash, Rachel glanced back, her eyes locking with Eleanor's across the wet courtyard. Neither spoke, but the silence was sharper than any blade. Rachel Harper stopped under the courthouse archway, the wind carrying the faint scent of rain and memory. She closed her eyes and heard her siblings' laugh echo once more, soft and fleeting. She whispered, "Were you taken, or did you choose to go?" No answer came, only silence heavy enough to crush her breath. She placed a hand against the cold stone wall, whispering, "I'll never stop asking." Ethan Cole's voice broke through, "What if the truth hurts more than lies?" Rachel's eyes opened, glistening with tears. "Then at least I'll know." She stepped forward into the night, her figure swallowed by shadows, leaving behind only the haunting question no verdict could ever silence.